have many projects going on, but cold weather is beginning to set in here in the Midwest, and I've needed to do this for a while, but I thought I needed to go back. I needed to come back to it. I need, for different reasons, I need to pave this section, whether it's going to be concrete or gravel. I think I'm going to do gravel, but in order to do that, I needed to take out these windows in my crawl space and block this in. Now, I'm not a professional brick mason, but I'm one who knows to do a few things pretty well. I could figure stuff out, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take you along with me. First thing I did is I dug down so I could get to the sill of that window. I took the glass out, and now I'm going to use a cutoff wheel and try to cut the frame, the steel frame, so that I can get it out of here. So that's where I'm at now. Yeah, so they actually grouted that in. That's probably why this side was harder to get off. That side has no grout in there. So they grouted only one side. Since I'm not a professional brick mason, I have opted for a different approach to this. I have some 3/8 rebar that I'm gonna cut little pieces off with my bolt cutters, and when I put this first layer of mortar down, I'm going to set those in, press in the mortar so that they go down against here. So when I set that down, if I didn't happen to get my mortar mix, you know, just right, the way it's supposed to be, it won't squish it down further. That way it can still set up and still be a 3/8 joint like you're supposed to have. But I didn't want to rely on my ability to get that mix just right. And since this video is not about, you know, mortaring and stuff like that, I'm not gonna focus the video on that. I'm just gonna show the steps of me doing it. If you want to learn how to do that, you have to go watch a different video on YouTube somewhere. So I'm gonna turn the camera off, and then I'm gonna spray this down, get it cleaned off and wet, I'm gonna mix up some mortar. I'm gonna do that first layer. In the mail, I've got coming a mortar pump. I've got a mortar pump coming. It's like a big syringe, and I'm not all that skilled at putting it on in order to get the block, you know, inserted in. I may have to actually take this siding off to get there. So what I was going to do is that second row I was going to set on those little 3/8 spacers when I set them in there, and then I'm going to take my mortar pump and take my mix and pump it into the joints. And then I may have to crawl down the crawl space with my bucket and pump the backside, just because I'm not sure how well I'll achieve what I'm trying to do. So I've got 12 spacers. I'm just gonna dry fit everything. Okay, those of you who are brick masons, you'll notice I'm doing some things wrong probably, but it's just a matter of doing it well enough for my application. You'll notice that I won't be putting it on the side as I get it in there. I'm gonna put that down in there afterward. I'm just going with my skill set. I just didn't want to wait for my mortar pump. I was going to use the mortar pump on the upper part. You'd be better off watching a professional brick mason do this. I'm not doing this video to show you how to do this. I'm just doing the video to document my life and my experiences and show that people, even without professional training, can do things. Since I didn't have the right tool that masons use, I knew there's probably some air pockets in the vertical mortar joints, so I found this piece of wood to compress it in there, since I wanted to make sure it was in there right. It's getting dark, and so my wife is filming it for me so that I could show you this technique of getting it into the vertical joints. I've already done this one over here, so it'll pack. So if it stops moving, it means you've kind of reached the end of it. I had my hand over the back in there as I was pushing to make sure it was coming out the back end, and then I smoothed it over, and now it's packing in there. So I'll come back when I get further along. Okay, so I had to actually take the bottom row of vinyl siding off, and the starter strip, I just cut it here because I didn't want to take it off because it goes back into there. So I cut it here, and I'm just gonna put it back up when I'm done. But I had to do that to get this next block in. Okay, so I got to this point using the method I showed. There was just not enough space for me to lift that block in place without like scraping off the mortar that I laid down on the bottom, and I couldn't. It wasn't even enough space for me to put the 3/8 spacers between that top row and the first row, because it was hitting the bottom wall plate. So I used some 1/4 inch spacers, and then shoved more mortar in there around those. This one has about a 1/4 inch gap left up under here. This one less, probably like 1/8 of an inch. So before I put this back on, I was gonna use some of this stuff. It's very similar to the expanding foam sealant, but this stuff is meant as a glue for gluing down subflooring and stuff to floor joists and things, and it doesn't expand as much. And I really just want it to seal, and I don't want it to expand too much, because I don't want it to swell up anything or bulge the bottom plate to the wall. Well, there's one window down and only one to go. So I had this idea. Before, where I think I said in the previous section that I was gonna set it on spacers and then go down the crawl space, glue the joint on all the pieces, and then come back out to the front and pump mortar into the joint from the outside. Well, the issue with that was that I'm relying on the mortar going straight here, straight there on these, joints and not falling in the middle. I think I'd just lose most of my mortar down in the hole. So I worked my way around a perimeter. I didn't fill these in solid. They're just worked around in a spiral to create this. So when it sets up, I'm gonna cut it off with a knife. That way, when I go to pump my mortar in, it's not gonna fall down in the hole. So that's my plan. It's definitely not faster, but sometimes just something being made easier helps. So that's where I'm at. I gotta let this all set up and cut it off, and then these are the first two for the first row. I actually used regular mortaring technique to put the two half blocks in up there because I could get my arm in around and tap them in place. So I opted for that, and then just this last block I have it shimmed because for some reason the base below was not level. It was tilted back like this. So when I laid the block, they were tilted back, so the upper row needed to be tilted forward. So those two half blocks, after I put the mortar in, I put a shim in the back and tapped it with a hammer to bring it forward, and did that on both sides. This one has shims at the back laid in there, and I slid the block in and then shimmed it to where it was as close as possible to being square in the hole. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, since I filled in the voids in the block with foam up at the top, I had some of this up at the top so that if whatever I did, I wouldn't lose whatever I put in there down in the hole. So that's got foam in those holes. So if I come in with my mortar pump in there on the sides or down below, I won't lose it down there. So I'm going to try to fix the block by getting some of this glue, this expanding glue, back toward the back edge of the block, so that most of the space is still filled with the mortar. But at least the foam would keep the block in place while I did that, because I might have to come back tomorrow to finish that. So anyway, that's what I was going to do now. So basically, about where that straw is taped onto this nozzle, about as far as I need to go back there. Turn it on. Make sure it's coming out. Okay, it's coming out. Now we get the acetone to clean off what got on the face, so that doesn't keep the block from looking normal. Well, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it's done. I don't know why this one was so much harder to do than the other one, but it was. Anyway, I hope any of the methods I use is an inspiration for someone else trying to figure out a way to fill in a window with cinder block or concrete block. I am gonna clean up and go in and eat and go to bed, and I will see you in the next video.